Hello, you beefy metal gods of war and thunder. This is Nicky G, and welcome to Better Commander. In one of my recent videos, I happened upon a mono red commander that gave me really cool vibes, man. He's a god, he's a hammer, he's a dime store Thor, he's Toralf, god of fury. Apparently Toralf likes to irritate frost giants and have adventures. He's got cool glowing rave tattoos and wields his freaky lightning hammer with alacrity. He can build a house and do all the wiring. This lad knows his way around a fuse box, alright. Toralf, god of fury. 2 red, legendary creature, god. Trample. Whenever a creature or planeswalker an opponent controls is dealt excess non-combat damage, Toralf deals damage equal to the excess to any target other than that permanent. He's a 5/4. He also has on the backside Toralf's hammer, 1 and a red, legendary artifact equipment. Equipped creature has 1 red, tap, unattach Toralf's hammer. It deals 3 damage to any target. Return Toralf's hammer to its owner's hand. Equipped creature gets +3/+0 as long as it's legendary. Equip 1 and a red. The equipment side is going to come into play extremely rarely. We are more interested in the ability to do giant damage to our opponents. Although I'm still constructing and playtesting this deck, I have a working version that will be in the description, but I really thought deeply about the kind of cards we would include in a Toralf deck. I entered the deck builder's trance, and I thought about the fact that he's a red commander, so we have access to a few wheels, we have rummaging effects, impulse draw. We're going to need a lot of card velocity because a few key cards exist in the game that efficiently play off Toralf's ability. The plan is simple. We want to burn the table down to nothing. We want only creatures that further this strategy, so this deck has a low creature count. We want damage augmenting cards, damage doublers, things that otherwise increase the damage done by Toralf and our red spells. We want a few rituals to accelerate our game plan, and then we want big damage spells that will absolutely kill everyone when they go off. The rest of the deck can be rampant interaction. We want to be able to deal with our opponent's threats and make a big nuisance of ourselves. Wheel of Misfortune and Reforge the Soul are great choices here. It's tough to get a real draw engine going in red, and we want to be able to refill our hand at a moment's notice. Unfortunately, these are the only 2 cards that are true wheels that are under a couple $100. I've been toying with Ruin Grinder, as he will die when we cast one of our big burn spells, then refill our hand. Plus he has Mountain Cycling for 2 mana, and he's a 7/4 with Menace. If we're going to include creatures, we want them to be annoying enough that everyone wants to remove them. Brash Taunter is an incredibly annoying creature. We can fight our opponent's high power creatures and weaponize their greed, dealing damage to our opponents. He's a good target for a Basilisk Collar as well. Chandras Incinerator looks like a bad card. The art is kind of generic. It costs 5 mana and a red. It's a 6/6. The spell costs less to cast. It costs X less to cast, where X is the total amount of non-combat damage dealt to your opponents this turn. This is a very interesting card. It's also got Trample. Whenever a source you control deals non-combat damage to an opponent, Chandras Incinerator deals that much damage to target creature or planeswalker that player controls. That's pretty good. You can toss damage at a player, double it up to a creature they control, and then Toralf can take the excess damage, swing it back at a player. You can then double it up to a creature they control. Interesting. We'll see how it pans out. It can also swing in for some trample damage. Pretty decent beefy beater. I also included Burgi, God of Storytelling, 3/3 for 2 and a red. Whenever you cast a spell, add a red. Until the end of turn, you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. Creatures you control can boast twice during each of your turns. I don't have any boast effects in this. I think Burgi would be really good to capitalize on our rituals and feed our bigger X spells. I included a copy of every damage doubler I could find. Furnace of Wrath, Dictate of the Twin Gods. These double all damage, which can be a liability. It means everything coming our way is doubled as well. Fire Servant and Fiendish Duo. These are not symmetrical effects. Make sure to read all of these cards very carefully when they're on the battlefield because they may affect how you distribute damage. They each have their own little idiosyncrasies. These cards, these damage doublers in general, can exponentially increase our damage output. Imagine hitting a 1/1 for 3 with Lightning Bolt or something. If you have Furnace of Wrath on the field, this is doubled to 6, which Toralf uses the excess to deal 10 damage to a 4/4, which is doubled again, and he uses that 6 excess damage to deal 12 damage to a 6/6. You get the picture. Tarbran, Thane of Redfell, has a similar additive effect, though not as dramatic. If a red source you control would deal damage to an opponent or permanent an opponent controls, it deals that much damage plus 2 instead. This includes every instance that Toralf deals damage. Double Vision copies our first instant or sorcery each turn. Fiery Emancipation is a damage tripler, and I don't even want to do the math on that one. I wanted to touch briefly on an old card named Repercussion. Whenever a creature is dealt damage, Repercussion deals that much damage to that creature's controller. It costs 1 red for this enchantment. This card puts damage where it counts. If a creature is dealt 12 damage, it's still dealt 12 damage. Toralf just takes the excess and spreads it around. So if it's a 2/2, we can take the excess 10 and deal it to the controller. So that would be 22 total damage. This is what we in deck building game call silly. I also included a bunch of rituals. These never seem to be dead cards and feed our big damage X spells. The two best are probably Jeska's Will and Mana Geyser. Even with 2 opponents, Mana Geyser can net you 10 mana. And Jeska's Will, I mean, do I really have to tell you why Jeska's Will is so good? It's impulse draw, crazy mana acceleration, and it's too bad that it's $20. Throughout the history of Magic the Gathering, there have been plenty of X-cost spells that are killer in a deck like this. Yes, they may kill Toralf, but that's the theme of the deck. You weaponize that damage, channel it through Toralf's hammer, and myrtleize all your opponents. We have Earthquake and its rounder cousin, Rolling Earthquake. These can deal a ton of excess damage for Toralf to hurl about. I included about 19 varieties of this type of mass damage spell, and honestly, this deck may want more. I may up that in the future. There are 2 cards that are absolutely key and extremely efficient. These are Blasphemous Act and Star of Extinction. These cards can take an opponent's Avenger of Zendikar and all its attendant tokens and kill the entire table. These cards are pretty vitally important to any Toralf deck and this type of mass burn strategy. I threw in 1 equipment for the fun factor, Basilisk Collar, for a massive life gain and death touch. Basilisk Collar is very cheap right now, it's about $2. If Toralf deals excess damage with death touch, he only needs to deal 1, so any excess can be thrown around more efficiently. And with the life gain, you can easily gain 60 life in a turn. So like I said, I'm still experimenting with this deck. This is by no means the end-all be-all of Toralf Bible knowledge and research, because I'm still testing. But I think I have the gist. Commander shouldn't always be about the most efficient path to victory, but you can have lots of interactions with cards like Abrade, you find some prisoners, Vandal Blast, direct damage spells to remove threats and have a fun game. I included Reverberate and Reiterate to copy our opponent's big draw and ramp spells, and Pyroblast and Red Elemental Blast for those pesky blue players at the table. So the good thing is you can combo off on turn 5 and hit a Blasphemous Act and kill everybody at the table. But the downside is that you kill Toralf, and if he eats more removal than that, he's going to be really hard to cast. This deck is not particularly resilient, and if Toralf gets removed too many times, it's game over. Red as a color is good with high risk, high reward strategies, so at least you can go out on your own terms in a blazing pyre. Let me know what you think. If you're into a red burn commander, I think this guy is an extremely viable option. He's cool, he's got thunder, he's got hammers, he's got, tattoos, whatever. Listen, enjoy yourself out there, have fun. This is Nicky G from Better Commander signing off.